Yo guys, Fikun here. I hope everyone made some money this week. Today I'm going to break down the trade recap that we took earlier today, Friday, August 23rd, during Jackson Hole for Powell's speech, and the reasoning behind it and why I took this setup. So let's dive right in. So let's go to Meta. Meta, we took a setup which was a crown reversal, and the reasoning we took that. So here we saw that um, I didn't mark my prior day highs or lows, but we saw, okay, so what I saw was you made a lower low here, right? So this lower low, I was watching for a entry short up here. So once we didn't get a break above the swing high, right? But however, we had got into some prior swings during yesterday's range. So this is the reason why we took short, right? So this was an area of interest from yesterday's high around this five. This was that prior swing low, right? And then they bounced it. So immediately I was watching for a short entry, right? So when we reached this top area, we took a short on this candle and we were basically out down here below VWAP for a nice 20%. I mean, realistically, this was a nice entry, right? Even if we broke into this 539.97 area, which was that other swing high that we were mentioning, this was a liquidity grab, right? So this candle would have faked everyone out and then they would have dumped it, right? I mean, realistically to say, if you guys held these throughout the whole day, I mean, easily over 200%. We had got a nice 20% here from this candle down, but if let's say we held those, right? I mean, this candle alone with the option premium, they possibly would have been down like maybe 10 to 15% due to implied volatility. However, you did have that pop and grind lower to take to the downside. I mean, this was, you have the break above this prior swing high, and you had double confirmation above the 21 EMA and buyers tapping into this VWAP, giving sellers a discount, right? I mean, if you were to take that setup up here, you're getting a discount too. So from this high to this low, you're getting a 61.8% retracement back down to retest these lows, right? See how we failed at the 618 and it bounced at the 50, right? Two try failure, back up to retest this area. So you see here, this is your 1 minute FVG, and you see how we failed that literally to the midline of the FVG and then dumped right back down. So I mean, you could have drawn pullback extension here, right? And this would have been a nice 50% retracement, and they continue to hold this 272 retracement, correct? So let's dive into SPY and what's my setup that I took earlier today and the reasoning behind that as well. So we know that SPY had made a gap, right? During the pre-market highs from yesterday's close, which was Thursday, and pre-market we gapped up from 557.18 low, I mean high, and we gapped up initially and open roughly around 559. So that is a 2 point gap up, correct? So what we were watching, we marked the prior day high and prior day low, right? So I took this setup here short. So once we broke this swing high here, right? I took a short entry and immediately got stopped out on this candle right here. This was like we literally loaded right here and got stopped out right here. Very tight stop, but I mean you have a double top failure, and then once we got that double top failure, we we had a pop and grind. What I mean by pop and grind, you have basically a initial move down, right? And then price tends to basically grind. What I mean by grind, you have basically buyer stepping out, right? So price grinds down. So now what do you want to do is mark your trend line to this low, right? And then mark your trend line to this high, right? And I called this live if you guys are not in the Discord group. So when you have price like just basically consistently making price, it's just literally you have a strong move and price is literally making this simple pattern. So what this tells us that buyers are stepping out of this position, right? And first test we took, we were not able to capitalize on this because on this initial entry because I mean you swept the prior swing high here, right? You broke the prior swing high at this area here, but we were not able to get filled short, right? I mean, this was still a good entry. Um, this candle was a little bit too explosive, and we have very strong sellers at this area because you see this. We fell above this 21 below this 21 EMA. They never was ever able to retrace above the 21 EMA. And first candle here, we took short, and we were out down here for a nice under 50%. But I mean, realistically to say, I was out here for like I think 60%, and this dump down here was like initial, basically another 100%. It was my contracts was at from 48, right? And these ran to I sold these around like 90, 90 something. No, yeah, it was like 94 or something like that. Yeah, I sold them for like 100%, and these dump this candle down was like ran from 48 cents to 194, which is like 200%, right? So we know that this swing low right here was an area of interest, right? Because when we opened, we made this low, right? So then you have a two try failure up down here, sweeping the liquidity from this low, and then they bounced it, right? And we also called this here, which is our crown reversal. So let me go to the 2 minute and break this down for you guys, right? So let's look here. We we have this 1 minute FEG right here, and you can also mark this up there. So it was a nice, we can see that who was in control in this area, right? So basically, we were in a range bound market, right? So when price makes a lower low, so we made a lower low, so you made a strong push up, price made a lower low down here, right? So what we look for is a entry. I call these crown reversals, right? You can call these wherever you like, but we see that we try to break above the swing high at 562.25, right? And initially this was an area of weakness up here. So you see that they swept liquidity up here, right? Strong push, and initially right after that confirmation candle close, dump right back down. And you have a confirmation set up right here. So you see how we tap this 50% on this midline on the 1 hour supply and dump right back down to fill the gap here, right? So what we call gap fills, we call these gap and traps, right? So I mean, 90% of traders, retail traders, like to short at these lows, right? Even at these lows, when you see the market push this move down, the average retail trader like to short that. And one thing behind it is we don't want to short at the lows. It's not high probable, it's not a probable setup, but you want to see if price is stuck in between. For example, here we see that price is stuck in between yesterday's high and yesterday's low. So yesterday's low is at 554.98, and we were never able to break above yesterday's high. And this is not yesterday's high. Yesterday's high was initially right here at 563.17. So you see how we double top in this area here and we dump right back down. So when you and when we see that price taps into filling the gap, we have a strong gap and trap to the upside, right? So you can see this was a nice V bottom back up to the upside. And I mean, this was very constructive for the buyer side. And you did see that what the sellers were able to do was achieve the gap fill at 557.18, right? And then they V bottom it right back up to retest these highs. So now my prediction is, so we were able to fill the gap at 557. And one thing to note is today was a ranging day. So what I mean by ranging day is when price tends to stay within yesterday's range. For example, SPY never broke yesterday's high or low, so this is an inside day. Typically on inside days is that your option premiums are decaying because the implied move is not trending. We're just stuck in between a range. For example, Nvidia, right? We made an outside day to an inside day today, and we're still stuck in this range, right? Let me go to the 3 minutes so you guys can see what Nvidia and the reasoning behind it, right? So we tapped into this 4 hour FEG here, right? At I'm sorry, at 129, um, 129, 129.17, and you reject this midline at 129.60. So right here, right, you have a lower low, break above this prior swing high, you can take this short, right? Break above the swing high, entry short, and you tap that 4 hour FEG back down. And they still very constructive from buyer side, right? They're holding this area of interest down here. So you can see now this inverse demand is no longer intact. We can see that buyers are holding above this area here at this 4 hour demand at the midline of 125.63. However, one thing to note is that we never filled the gap to the downside at this low here at 124.56, right? But you can obviously see that very strong momentum from the buyers at open, and they were able to push price to the upside. So very strong buyers here, but I mean, today was just a ranging day across the board, right? And I mean, Nvidia has earnings on next week on Wednesday. So, I mean, you can see consolidation here despite Powell's speech. And the thing is I just want to say, I believe Nvidia might pull back because you have several gaps to the downside. You have a gap here at 124. You also have a gap down here at 108.95, and you have a gap here at 104.76, right? So remember, gaps tend to act as a magnet. But I mean, realistically to say, this can always break to the upside. It just depends on how what numbers they report for earnings. So, I mean, if you look across all tech here, you can see Apple inside day, right? Outside bar, double outside bar followed by inside day. So outside day yesterday, inside day today, tapping into this daily daily FEG, I think. No, 4 hour FEG up here. So I mean, this is an area that where they're not able to break above so far, but we can see very constructive momentum, like very strong. They're trying to sweep above this, like consolidation. But I mean, if you look on the 4 hour, I mean, you can see that momentum is shifting to the downside, and you don't have any divergence. So I mean, you can see that price is coming up, but momentum is shifting to the upside. Um, but however, you do see a divert buyer's momentum on a daily chart. So no setup here, but you did have a bearish divergence here, which panned out perfectly on the larger time frame. So um, that's just for now. Let's go to Qs. Qs the same thing. Everything tech-wise is consolidating and waiting for earnings. But however, we reject this 4 hour FEG here on Qs, right? And we can see now that sellers are stepping in and there's no divergence here. So we said that there was a divergence, bearish divergence on price for Q. So what we saw was the momentum shifting to the downside, right? We never made higher highs here. We made lower highs, but price continuously ripped to the upside. So this is why I was bearish. But for the time being, let's see if price, so if momentum starts to shift upwards. So let's say if for example, like this here, right? We want to see some type of momentum like this. So you have a lower low in momentum. So right here, right, you have a lower high in momentum, but lower low in price. So you would like to see a bounce like this, right? So if we get a bounce like this, then we can continue to the upside. But for the time being, I am very bearish and would like to see maybe a pullback somewhat to the downside. Maybe tap back into, um, let's say maybe back into this low here, around five, no, one, no, 489 to, yeah, let's see, maybe this midline here. That will be like an area of interest at the 468.10. That will be an area of interest, and you can also look into watching this area of interest as well here around break below that. Then we'll look for an area of interest maybe around these lows here at this other FEG down here, which was where we consolidated and continue to push higher. But this area is an area of interest for Qs. Qs need to hold above 461 to be bullish. If we don't be if we aren't able to hold above that, then I would like to see expect price to retrace back down to retest these lows here, and then you also have 457. But I mean, honestly saying, you do have, I think, watch here to see if we have any divergence here on the 15-minute. No divergence here. Um, just honestly leaning kind of low, like slightly bearish, but you do have earnings here for Nvidia, right? And they don't have slightly any um we don't have any gaps to the downside, but however, we do have a gap up here to 495, right? You have a gap at 495, and you also have a gap here, which is right down to the upside at this area here, roughly speaking at on a daily 493. So this is an area that buyers would like to see, 493, but we're currently stuck in the middle of this range, right? You have a gap at 465 to the downside, and you have a gap down here to the downside at 454. But I'm not expecting price to dip that low. Let's say if we get a retracement from this low to high here, watch for an area of support somewhat at these lows. Let's go to the 2-hour time frame and then tap into these pullback. So let's say we pull back into this 50%. The 50% will be at roughly 457.52, or maybe fill the gap to both of these gaps at 465.11 and 454.37, and then push price back up to the upside. But I mean, they filled this gap here periodically, and maybe watching this 450.91. SPY, let's kind of dive into SPY real quick here. So SPY, we filled this gap at 557.18 from this morning. So we know that sellers achieved what they wanted here, right? And you held above prior displacement, right? You broke. This was an area of the prior swing high, and we continue to hold above it. So this area is an area of interest. You have a gap at 564.26. So maybe we gap fill this and then dump back down, but keep in mind we do have several gaps to the downside. You have a gap at 543.75, and then you have a gap here at 534.21. And you have a slight gap down here at 515.77, and then you have a slight gap down here at 493.09. That's not, I'm not, these gaps are something you need to mark on your chart, but realistically say I don't believe it'll come that low. Um, the way markets are setting up, maybe once we push towards new all-time highs, we might pull back that low. But my projection for SPY right now, if we continue to draw these anchored highs to this low, I believe SPY may be pushing back up towards maybe 580, 585, or maybe for the long term wise, a push back up from 580 to 600. Um, but you can see relatively strong buyers here. And I mean, they're holding these prior swing lows very strong. So, and you have a two try failure at these lows. So now what we're watching for is if sellers are continuing to, so you see momentum is shifting to the downwards, but to the downside, but momentum for sellers are shifting stronger to the downside, but price never broke above the high, right? So that's just something to be mindful of. I mean, we could do, the market could just tap back into this 556.17 and then rip right back down to the downside. However, I mean, the market is kind of bullish despite Powell's dovish action regarding monetary policy, and he was low key signaling a potential 25 to 50 point basis cut for this upcoming September. And I mean, the market has not already priced it in, but a pullback could be necessary once he does interest rate be cut interest rate sometime in September. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great one.